So we're going to be talking about routing for a little second, because this is something I get a lot of questions on. A lot of people like to ask, like, how do I know what builds to play? What should I think about when designing my builds? How should I be routing? So I felt like it was something that we could just sit down and go through and hopefully give some explanations, right? So I want to start by clearing some misconceptions that a lot of people have in the beginning. The first one is that before you can even start playing the game, you have to know how to design a build and like what to play, and that's completely false. My biggest recommendation I actually make for newer players is going to be that pick the character you want to play, and then there's a magic button here called Search Save Plans. And what this does is it brings up a catalog of all the save plans that most players use. And from here, find a build that's pretty high up here, right? Because it's mostly based on like likes, uses, and recommendations and stuff. And seems simple enough to play. So for instance, this is a barber build that looks to do Bracelet of Scotty. You can see it's Temple, School, Avenue to Beach, and then you go to Hotel to fight for Tree. This is fine. Or, if you don't like the idea of fighting for Tree, you could pick this one as well. And you just need to find something that kind of fits what you're looking to do. Once you have the build, pick it, and play it. Play it out, figure out kind of why it works, how to play this, get decent enough at routing this before you start moving on to some of the other concepts like making your own routes and stuff. Now, there's a lot of the next misconception is that your route needs to be like 4 zones or less, super fast. That's false. And to show you all that, I have brought up an example here, being Tank Kiara. Now, Tank Kiara, while not being in the meta strictly at the moment, has in history been a very strong build, and at times has been ranked like the #1 build by far. And historically speaking, it has never been less than 6 zones. It has been 7 zones for a period of time, and then it will occasionally shift between 6 and 7 depending on what items are needed. This build finishes nothing until its 4th area, and from there, you're like scavenging for like a whole lot of items for a very large portion of the game. Why does this build work? Well, because time spent routing is not everything. Sometimes taking a little bit extra time to get those important items can actually like make or break a build. Now, that doesn't mean that you should always just go for your best in slots, but more so just to say that like just because a build is long does not make it bad. But don't be out here trying to invent the wheel. If there's a faster way to route the items you're looking for, it's probably worth doing. So don't worry about your build's length too much, just make sure that it's something that actually works. As a new player, the best way to do that is mostly just to fucking use Search Safe Plans. Don't worry about making your own builds until you understand the concepts behind what makes routings good. Now, moving into that, we're actually going to show off something more in terms of like what helps actually getting your route online and everything. A lot of newer players don't know this, and it may seem it's kind of arbitrary, but loot in containers is actually not completely random. Instead, it's kind of like algorithmically sorted so that like you'll see at least one of every item in a certain grouping of chests. And these chests are semi-randomly sorted. We can actually pull up something on the Eternal Return Reddit to show y'all what I'm talking about. And you can use this chart to kind of help you, but to be honest, I won't say it's completely necessary. A lot of the groupings make sense, in my opinion, when you look at them outside of the logic, right? Boom. I guess it doesn't matter. So this is the chart. So these are broken to groupings. You can see, so like if we look here at docks, all the bottom containers here are part of group 1, right? Bless me. Group 5 is all of these. Group 4 is all of these. Keep in mind, it's boxes that are close together. So you want to try to stick to a grouping as best as you can and try to not deviate from that group until you have exhausted the containers. So let's say I spawned right here, right next to this box, which I guess You can see it right here, right? So a lot of people will say like, oh, well, I'm just gonna loot this, make my way into here, right? Well, depending on what you need, it might be faster to just loot these 2 boxes first. Instead of immediately opening this box, use that bonus movement speed you have in the beginning to come down here, loot these first. Especially if there's people already in this house, right? And then from here, if someone's already looted this, you can come upwards this way and start looting these, because these are, this one's ungrouped, and these are part of a second grouping, right? You want to try to work the groupings as best as you can to speed up your fasting. Map is a little nicer. Let's check it. Yeah, this one is a little bit nicer, and you can kind of see, like, you can even zoom in. This is really well done, whoever made this. So it's like, it also shows you how many items are in a box. So it's like, you can see this corner box here in beach. This is a large box, you know. This has 5 items, this one has 3, these have 4, I'm pretty sure. Maybe one of them only has 4. Oh, these have 3. These are 3, the barrels are 4. So it's like, there's a lot of little concepts that go into like what you should find, how you should be pathing, but you mostly want to be pathing around these. The next thing is going to be coming into chapel. This is going to show kind of what I mean, and it's like, work towards your next area, right? So when I loot here, I want to check this, and a lot of people want to come down this way, right? And check these, because this is its own grouping in chapel. And while this is great, this takes a lot of time. So what I would say is, because we didn't spawn here and we can't guarantee that that hasn't been looted, it's better to check this, come up this way and loot these, because it pushes us closer to this TP, right? So we'll loot these, and then we'll come this way. You can loot this if you're still missing pretty hard, and then you can loot these. And if you're lucky, you're ready to go. And if you're not, once you've gotten to this point, you can come into here and loot these. And then once you're done looting these, it might be a good decision to leave. And that's the next big tip. Don't waste time in an area that you feel like you don't need to. So let's say we loot these areas, right?
What do we have here?
I wish I picked a character with more MS. So, we're gonna do some Mishima wave dashing, right? So let's say we're at this point, okay? And I'm missing 1 piano wire. I do not recommend staying for this piano wire at all. I really don't, because think about it. What's that 1 piano wire gonna finish you? In this build, you might not have your headpiece finished. I think it's better to move on and get the rest of your items online. So keep in mind, don't waste time like needlessly, like looking for upgrades that you don't need in one area when you could just move on. Now, if there's extra containers you can loot, then you should absolutely look to do that, right? So let's say I'm like right here and I was at that point where it's like, oh, I still need 1 more piano wire, right? There's no reason to not check these containers before moving into cemetery, you know? Faster to go under the chapel or up and through the middle of chapel? It's kind of a split of both. I would say take account how many containers you're going to hit. So if you come this way, you're gonna loot those 4, and then you're at that, where if you come this way, you can loot like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, whereas everything past these 4 and going outwards, you'd have to like, you're technically walking away from the teleporter. So you want to play towards the amount of boxes as well, in a sense.
Don't have time for a proper send-off.
So make sure you're just keeping in mind you're routing in ways that make sense logically for time, right? And then don't skip boxes if you don't need to. Now, if I have everything and I'm done here, like let's say I don't need any more piano wire and I'm ready to leave, there's no reason to check these boxes because I don't need anything else. So let's just go, right? And then we'll come into sim. And the last big tip is kind of based on timing, and it's that if your build has an objective of some kind, make sure you're there on time for it. So let's say you're fighting for a hotel tree, right? And you can finish your fire helmet, or you can start walking to the tree and be there as it spawns. I think it is a better like decision to be at the tree when it spawns, because if you get there and there's no one around, you can craft your helmet real fast and then start grabbing the tree. Rather than if you build your helmet first and then start walking there, someone might take the tree and leave before you get there. So 3 bandage build is not better start from the zone that has it? No, it absolutely would be like slightly better to start from the zone that has it, but it kind of depends. Like, there's more that goes into it than that, so you can't just say like, oh, my build needs 3 feathers, so I should start hospital to guarantee I get my feathers. That's not always the case. There may be other restrictions like inventory boom, which is another concept where it's like you run out of inventory space as you're gathering equipment, right? You may not be able to start hospital for that reason. Search EXP worth it? Not at all. It is not worth it to be opening crates simply for Search EXP. Search EXP increases your vision range, which does absolutely fucking nothing, basically. You'll never notice it. Don't worry about it. It's so minuscule. You should not be searching containers for EXP. You want more vision? Then build vision items. Build cameras, for the love of God. One last thing. Because I get a lot of concepts on like, what should I do for food and beverages? I would say find 1 thing of food and 1 thing of beverages you want to make on your route and stick to those for the beginning of the game, okay? So for instance, let's say you do, let's say you're on Jan and you're playing this build that I was just showing off, right? Not this build, but this build is the one you see more. Right? You're playing this field. Going through here, you don't have a lot of great options for food, but what you can do, right, is you can make, where is it? You can make garlic ramen. So in the beginning, you don't plan on using your bread, get rid of it. Pick up ramen, and then when you get to cemetery, you can start picking up the garlic, right? And that'll be your only food for the game. You don't need more than 4 to just get like the 1 piece of garlic and boil it, and then you can, when you're in cemetery, because you already have boiling water, you can also do purified water. So with that 3 sets of boiling water, you would do 2 purified water, 1 garlic ramen. Now this isn't fit every build. In fact, it doesn't even exactly work for this build because you need to do vigilante with your boiling water, so you'll have to boil more water if you wanted to do that. But the idea is like, do things that make sense and don't over prepare. There's no reason for you to make like 12 garlic ramen. You won't need it that early in the game. Make 4, move on. And it is okay for your build to not have like a bulk of food. You can just do 2 buns if you really need to. If your like build is really strapped on good food, you can do hamburgers, just do 2 of them. And the idea is worry on food after your build is done, right? Once your build is done, then you start working on making more foods, and that one you'd have to get into the concept of like what's easy foods to make. I would recommend learning most of the things. To make it simple on yourself, I would learn about the things you can make out of heated oil. In most cases, fried chicken is the only one you ever fucking need half the time. Heated stone can be used for massive bulk. You can do it with baked carp and baked potatoes. This is really easy. For beverages, any of the things that build out of boiling water is super nice and simple. Which is mostly hot honey water, Americano, purified water, and hot chocolates. So basically we're talking about a lot of lighter foods here. There's a lot of food that builds out of lighters that's really easy to use. And you would use these to help supplement yourself until you're able to understand like, okay, what can I make without lighters? And then learning the 1 zone foods. And what I mean by that are foods that only need you to gather materials from 1 area to make. A good example of this is tandoori chicken. You need curry powder and then meat from any animal. You can find this in factory. Bacon and garlic sticks is just garlic and meat. You can find this in alley, temple, and cemetery. Fish fillet with eggs can be done in just cemetery and forest. With eggs and then fishing up carp. So it's like there's a lot of options, and just keep these in mind whenever you're thinking about your foods. And that should help give you a more rounded sense of what can be done for to help speed up your routing a little bit. Not worrying about these, like all these little options that you can do, and kind of just focus on 1 thing at a time. But anyways, guys, I hope this has been helpful for y'all, and if you've liked it, drop a like, drop a subscription, and we'll catch y'all around next time.